Let's assume that I'm not lying to you about all of it, okay? Then you say it might be a fringe minority who say fascist, for example, who say racist. Here would be my challenge to you. Name me one member of the Democratic Party in a national position of leadership, one who's run for office, either been president, vice president, or ran for the office, who hasn't accused our side of being fascist, of comparing us to Hitler. Name me one.
My fans, I have arrived.
Me too.
Welcome to part 2 of this installment of Change My Mind. The premise, the left is violent. Click the link in the description to see the entire hour-and-a-half first installment from yesterday. Now, before these, it had been more than a few moons, years, since I was last on campus, and for obvious reasons. It was an ever-increasing risk that required more security, and a lot of students were carrying this on and doing it themselves on campus. But as a lot of that stopped, as a semi-reluctant participant, felt compelled to bring this back. Luckily, this go-around, the team around me was top-notch. I can't thank them enough. Was basically a small army. And we were able to do it in this climate with minimal risk. That means no prior announcement. That means really no interaction with the crowd that can get riled up. And in a lot of ways, that's what Change My Mind was originally meant to be. It's two people sitting at a table, having a genuine conversation where hopefully no one feels pressured to be performative. The true goal by the end of this is that someone maybe actually changes their mind. Maybe me, usually not, but maybe. And the good news is the pop-up crowd was respectful and the conversation was highly productive.
What part of progressivism do you think comes with that? I mean, like
Racial
I'm
division, gender division, classist division.
Right.
I mean, you don't see the right saying, hey, these people are fascist and they want to genocide you.
No. I think that's
Okay, well, mostly.
When Marx wrote his communist ideologies, it was conservative-based.
Now, I know out of context that may seem pretty bad, but if you click the link in the description to yesterday's full hour-and-a-half installment, you'll see that in context, it's worse. But I do appreciate her willingness to sit down and talk. And I was hoping that part 2 would be just as productive. And in a lot of ways, it was. And in some ways, it was not.
It seems like it's a higher percentage of these parties on both sides which have these extreme views.
I don't think
that's the case.
But assuming I'm not lying, right? Would all those polls reflect?
I don't think you're lying.
No, but assuming I'm not lying. So
polls.
sit back, perhaps grab a tasty beverage, if you will, and enjoy what was mostly a constructive Change My Mind. And of course, you can tune in to The Daily Show, live streamed on Rumble, every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's really my bread and butter. And this is the first comeback of Change My Mind. Do you want to see more of these? It's up to you. Let me know in the comments. First up, here's Jacob. Hey, Jake. Nice to meet you, sir. Grab a seat. And do you mind moving in so I can hear a little bit?
I don't mind at
Don't get cozy. Get cozy. Come on, move on in. So, Jacob, you prefer Jake?
Jacob's good.
Okay. I don't know how familiar you are with this segment or this kind of piece of content, what we do. Let me explain to you first what it's not.
Sure.
And I mean this genuinely. It's not gotcha. It's not designed for reels, clips, dunks, owned. Our conversation will be uploaded in its entirety. The ideal scenario is that we actually have a productive civil discussion. That's not always possible.
I mean, that's what I would like. So.
Yeah, okay, good. And the premise today is, and I would assert, that predominantly the left is responsible for a large portion of the political violence in this country and the tenor and tone to a point that I think needs to be dealt with, or certainly at least conversationally. That's not to say that there isn't political violence across the board, but again, predominantly coming from the left. And if you disagree with me, you are more than welcome to change my mind. If you wouldn't mind, just when we start, I just want to make sure that we go through right here the definition, and just if you agree to the definitions of political violence from The Economist and Cato. So in effect, the idea
I'm not sure if I understand this definition. So
okay, and we're using this because these are often the numbers that are being cited right now from The Economist, the TPP Project, and Cato. Basically, violence committed in the name of or as a political means to an end. Right?
Even if it's just a complaint or an indictment and they haven't been convicted or it hasn't been confirmed.
Yeah, well, political violence, acts of violence being committed, right? I understand too if there are charges, convictions, are different, but we agree as far as in principle, political violence. For example, I don't know how you vote, but let's say you vote Democrat and you hit and run today.
Okay.
That's not political violence just because you vote Democrat, right?
Of course.
But if you were to go run someone over because they are a Republican or vice versa, that would be political violence. Do we agree?
I agree with that.
Okay. And on that premise, I believe it's predominantly coming from the left. And you are welcome to change my mind or tell me where you disagree.
Sure. So I guess I just want to first ask, obviously, the Charlie Kirk thing is massive. I'm not super familiar with what other acts of political violence have occurred recently. Maybe you could tell me, because other than the Charlie Kirk assassination, I don't know what else has occurred.
Right up the road here, ICE, people were shot. 3 were shot, 1 was killed at an ICE facility, done in the name of anti-fascism. There were bomb threats at another ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas. If you want to go through.
Well, that's why I asked about the complaint. So is it political violence to threaten something if there were bomb threats? Does that count as political violence?
We would have to, well, I would say this. We'd have to apply the same standard to both, right?
Okay.
So I'm just using examples according to the standard where right-wing political violence has been included. I understand in the ideal, right, you'd be going through a conviction. Right. But for example, let's take a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that someone walked up to somebody in the street and said, "Are you a Trump voter?" And the person said, "Yes." He said, "You're a Trump voter? Are you sure?" Bang, bang, shot him, killed him, point blank, and then said, "I got him, I got the Trump voter," and then was shot by the police. We would still consider that political violence if there's documentation of that, right, on camera?
Sure.
Okay. So you would agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm just...
Okay, I want you to watch this because this, you just said it's in Portland.
That's obviously terrible.
Yeah. That was Aaron Danielson, and that was a Mr. Michael Rhino in Portland. That wasn't listed according to the current stats as political violence because the police shot him before there was a guilty conviction.
Okay.
We would agree, though, that's political violence, right?
I would agree, based on what you're telling me. And
Yeah.
again, I just want to clarify.
Sure.
What you're saying is these acts of political violence are done disproportionately by the left compared to the right.
As a method, yes.
Okay. I mean, maybe I don't disagree with that. I mean, the sign out front just said the left is violent,
Sure.
which I don't agree with, especially as a whole. I mean, I think there are a lot more incidents of peaceful protest and moderate and people who are on the left who, I mean, it's a very, very small, isolated segment, and we're talking about.
But what if you were
a
wrong
handful.
about that?
What if I was wrong that most people who lean left or are on the left
Are peaceful? What if I were to tell you that a majority of today's political left view violence against either political adversaries, people of political persuasions, as acceptable, as somewhat to complete?
Well,
what if it's over
that's different.
62%? Somewhat to completely acceptable. What if those on the left actually support political violence at a ratio of 5 to 8 to 12 to 1 to conservatives? What if that was a fact? It doesn't mean that you are, but it, again, would be reflective of the whole of the left, much more so than the right.
If that was a fact, it would support what you're saying, and not trying to say that that doesn't exist. I mean, I would be skeptical if I saw something as to what you said. I think 62%. I think there's no way that 62% of people who vote left, who believe left, support violence. Have I seen instances?
So it's a recent YouGov poll. YouGov, not a conservative poll. 77% of self-identified conservatives said political violence is unacceptable always. Okay?
Only 77?
77. Only 38% of leftists. 62% answered somewhat to completely acceptable. Some answered I don't know. And then there was another Snap poll before that had, again, at a ratio of 6 to 1, self-identified liberals supporting political violence in comparison to conservatives. It doesn't mean you or all, but if we're comparing those demographics, it is stark, it is consistent. I could point you to another one after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Over 60% of the left said it is somewhat to completely acceptable.
I mean, again, I'd love to see these polls, and if those are representative, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's okay to support political violence. I'm honestly a little shocked at how low the conservative, like if only 77%, I would have think it'd be like 99%.
Yeah, you think it'd be 99% of the left according to your premise, right? But it's 38.
I think, well, that is what I would think, and it's not been my experience that most people who are on the left do support political violence. I will say, and this has troubled me, is I have seen members of the left support, for example, Hamas. I have seen members of the left not condemn Charlie Kirk assassination, or who have spoken out as being happy about it. I just don't think that is a majority of the population. I would be very curious to see these polls, but
matter of fact,
that's
do we
not
have,
been my experience. And
so someone, one second, can we have the QR, because we actually have a QR code so you can see all the sources.
That'd be great.
Yeah, great. They should have had that earlier.
I can look at this later. I mean, we're just here.
No, but I want to give it to you so you can access it. And by the way, I do think, just to be clear, I think that your heart is in the right place, and I think you're honest in that this is your perspective because you probably think it's abhorrent, as I do, political violence.
Right.
And here's why we're having this conversation, okay? For example, see, we have bulletproof glass and basically a small platoon here.
Yeah, it's scary.
I can imagine it is. But before this last event, people would have argued it's unnecessary. And we've had to take increasing security measures. I can tell you that the reason I stopped doing this for years is because every single time, there was some serious violent action carried out. There were rocks thrown, concrete milkshakes, people trying to slash tires, Molotov cocktails, and no one would listen. There's a reason that Charlie Kirk had security before he was assassinated, right? There are a lot of close calls, and you saw the one that got through. And the rhetoric was always, you're fine, until you shed blood.
Look, I completely agree. I mean, there's definitely extreme political violence. I've seen it happen. The whole country just saw it happen. I just think
But can I
put
just
on
finish
a
that
sign
one point?
that the entire left is violent.
No, the left
I think
is violent as an ideology and as a majority, which you'll see with the stats that I present to you. But here's the thing, and this is a genuine concern. There's no off-ramp here. Let me explain to you what I mean. I think we both want to avoid any type of civil war or serious conflict, right? We both do.
I don't think we're close to that.
I'll tell you why I think it could be in the cards within the next decade. Okay, and I've not said this before these last 2 years. There was only one off-ramp when the left, a member of the left, assassinated Charlie Kirk in cold blood in the name of political leftism, of radical trans ideology leftism, right? Justified it through Charlie Kirk being hateful, which he's not, him being prejudiced, which he's not. The only off-ramp would have been if the leadership on the left, and if a majority of the left said, hey, look, this has gone too far. We've labeled these people fascists, Nazis, racists, genocidists because of their trans policy. And my God, some people out there are actually believing it. We're sorry, let's tone it down. Instead, there was a very surprising, gleeful celebration thereafter. And you can say not all the left, but every single vigil, every single memorial, every single mural that was put up was desecrated, spit on. There were assaults from the left when people on our side, and by that I mean conservative Christian America by and large, have one of ours attacked, and then they pursue our spaces to honor the dead and celebrate. That tells us, oh, there are too many.
So you think because of this, you think we're trending towards some kind of civil war, civil conflict?
I can tell you this, I have a pretty large sample size, and this would be anecdotal in addition to the empirical. Since COVID, I would say that's number 2. I never saw more people change their political persuasion outside of COVID in my lifetime. People who were self-identified liberals who couldn't send their kids to school, right? They thought, okay, it's going too far. I've never had more people reach out and say, I was so shocked at the celebration and justification, the assassination of Charlie Kirk from who I thought were moderate liberal friends, that I've had to delete them from social media. I can't be included amongst them. There's an exodus taking place because of the reaction. And you can't point me to an example like that on the right. It doesn't exist.
Look, I mean, you're making good points. I don't see how this is leading to civil war, but I totally agree with what you're saying. I've seen people have the exact reaction that you're discussing. I think it's wrong. In my experience from anecdotal evidence, that's why I'm curious to see the empirical studies, I don't think that represents a majority of the left. The incidents you're talking about memorials being desecrated, this is...
And you've seen it, right?
I've seen it, but this isn't coming from like the Democratic leaders. Like this isn't coming from the majority of.
Sure, it is.
I wouldn't say you're saying Democratic leaders.
Yeah, let me explain to you. Charlie Kirk was killed because people actually believed that he was a fascist. And Gavin Newsom just said it about the Republican Party and Stephen Miller not more than 24 hours ago.
So you would blame the leaders for saying these
I would
things?
I would say they're responsible. If they are going to say that Donald Trump's rhetoric is responsible for Black Lives Matter, which preceded him by 2 to 3 years under Barack Obama, I certainly would say the ongoing rhetoric from the left that Republicans and Donald Trump are racist, that they are fascist, comparing them to Nazis, Hitler, that they are genocidists because they don't believe that children should I think that rhetoric, because let me ask you this, the people who have committed this violence, for example, right here at ICE, Charlie Kirk, right, Antifa, this man you just saw, they believe that Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump are fascists. If that's true, how do you deal with fascists? If half the country believes that we're fascists, how do you deal with fascists?
You
can't do it at the ballot box.
Let me break this down one at a time because that was a lot.
Okay.
First thing, I think you can't 100% blame people for the things that they say inciting violence. People have their own agency and their own decision making.
No, they campaign on them. It's the DNC campaign platform. It's
some
fascism,
people,
Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Gavin Newsom. You can't name one. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. Fascism, comparisons to Hitler. They say that we want to oppress blacks. They say we want to erase trans people.
I mean, I've seen it happen. It happens occasionally. I don't think the majority of Democratic leaders say this or believe this, and even some of the ones who do maybe not believe it. But if we're just talking about rhetoric,
but what if they all do? What if they all do?
If we're talking about rhetoric being dangerous and inciting violence, I think the right shares some blame in that too. I don't think the right is completely without blame for speaking poorly of the other side. Like, I mean, Donald Trump is certainly not the the idol or the model of manners or not being.
Manners are different from labeling your opposition as fascist who won't relinquish the reins of power. Ergo, you need a violent revolution.
But here's my point.
Yeah.
My point is, yes, some Democratic leaders have said things, have called other people fascists, have called them racist. Some people on the right as well have said things about members on the left. I've called them communists, I've called them socialists, similar type of rhetoric. And I don't think it's
similar.
I don't think it's right to blame the leaders for violent acts that a small minority of extreme supporters commit. I don't think that means the entire party is violent. I don't think that means that the leadership is violent. I think there are simply a small group of extremes. And I agree with you. Are we seeing it more from the left than from the right? I think we are. I think if I were to do some research, I'm sure I would be able to find some acts of political violence
Absolutely.
Coming from the right.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
But maybe there are more from the left, and that is what I've seen, and I agree with you there.
I appreciate your honesty.
But I do not agree that it is the entire Democratic Party, that it is the leadership of the left, that it is the belief of the majority of the left that these acts are okay. I know there is a higher percentage of...
Sorry, I know this bug keeps coming.
Yeah.
It's a bitch, isn't it? Sorry.
I've definitely seen people from the left and Democrats who have not condemned what happened to Charlie Kirk and have not condemned these political acts of violence, who have not condemned what's going on in Israel.
No, but
I don't think the majority of the
but what
left
if, let's assume I'm not lying to you. Okay, let's assume that there's a YouGov poll. Let's assume there's a Reuters poll. Okay. Let's assume that you've got 62% somewhat to okay. Let's assume that you have a 6-to-1 ratio of political violence being okay from the left. Let's assume that after Donald Trump's, the attempted assassination, that over 60% of the left said that violence against Donald Trump would be somewhat to completely justified. Let's assume that I'm not lying to you about after the Tesla bombings, that a majority of the left said it would be somewhat to completely justified in contrast to Republicans. Let's assume that I'm not lying to you about all of it, okay? Then you say it might be a fringe minority who say fascist, for example, who say racist. Here would be my challenge to you. Name me one member of the Democratic Party in a national position of leadership, one who's run for office, either been president, vice president, or ran for the office, who hasn't accused our side of being fascist, of comparing us to Hitler. Name me one.
I mean, this is tough for me to answer because I'm not super familiar. I couldn't even name that many
don't exist.
Political leaders. But I'm very certain if I looked hard enough, I would find Democratic leaders who have not called other people fascists, who have not called other people racist. I have seen a lot of them, and again, I've seen on social media, and like obviously I've seen the usual suspects doing it. But
like Biden, Kamala Harris, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer. Every single one of them has lobbed the fascism accusation against Donald Trump and his voters.
I agree with you, and I've seen that. I'm just saying there are 530-something members of Congress. I am 100% sure that there is a Democratic one there. That
I'm sure there is one.
Well, right. I just don't know their name because I haven't.
But you can't point me to a single person in the right. Go Donald Trump, Vance, all the way down, who've said, hey, by the way, they're never going to relinquish power. The enemies are fascists who can't be dealt with at the ballot box. You can hear Donald Trump say shitty things.
Not specifically, but I've seen comparable things said from Donald Trump.
Like?
I can't remember off the top of my head. But he has definitely not been the model of rhetoric. And again, part of this rhetoric, I mean, it's politics. It's people appealing to their base. It's people appealing to some of the extreme members. Because also, you got to remember that most people don't even come out and vote. It's like 30-something% of people who've come out and vote.
It depends on the year.
It depends on the year.
I think it's been closer to 50 in recent years.
The people who vote are usually tend to feel very strongly and tend to be more extreme.
Sure.
So these leaders, they, from a practical perspective, have to appeal to these more extreme voters, which is why it seems like it's a higher percentage of these parties on both sides which have these extreme views.
I don't think
that's the case.
But assuming I'm not lying, right? Would all those polls reflect?
I don't think you're lying.
No, but assuming I'm not lying. But let's assume that those polls exist, right? Let's assume that you take this QR code and you go,
I assume they do exist.
Damn,
I just don't know if they're representative. Difference between that, you could poll 100 people and you can poll a different 100 people. You can poll 100
how many
people
polls would you need of self-identified liberals versus self-identified from left-leaning polling sources? How many would you need to go? And I think you've already agreed that it's predominantly coming from the left. I guess at this point what we're talking about is, okay, if we both agree that there is more violence coming from the left right now, right now, and I think we agree on that.
Well, more political violence.
More political violence from the left. Yes, sure. Right now. I think we agree on that.
Yes.
It begs the question, why? Right? And I don't think that it's productive to kind of both sides that, because it's not a both sides. It's a disproportionate percentage on one side. Also, I think, if we both, for example, you and I can find common ground. I think this has been hopefully respectful.
I think so too.
You seem like a very nice gentleman. This right here, not listed in the stats, right? Because right now the media also goes out and says there's more violence on the right wing, which obviously you don't.
I
you're not
haven't
buying.
Seen that.
That's not registered as.
I'm not like watching.
No, but that's not
CNBC,
registered as political violence. Isn't that crazy to you? Cato.
If what you say is true, then yes,
it is true.
That should be registered as political violence. I agree.
It's not. Nor the Summer of Love, the George Floyd riots, none of those deaths, none of the arsons, the January 20th protests where people were arrested right after Donald Trump became president, none of those included as political violence. The problem is, and you say, and I hope that we can find common ground. I hope we have an off-ramp to some kind of civil upheaval, genuinely. But when one side gets backed into a corner where they need security to go out and express their opinion for sitting at a table, when one side says, hey, hold on a second, we are effectively being targeted and hunted if we are public figures, or, for example, even if we're not public figures, if we're working at an ICE facility, we're working at a police precinct, and something needs to be done, and people go, no, it's both sides. And then you have the media saying, actually, it's the right who's more politically violent. You back them into a corner, and I think you know what the end game is there. And so I hope that you do spend time.
I don't know what the end game is there.
The end game there is if people are at the receiving end of political violence and it's gleefully celebrated thereafter, and then they are accused of committing the political violence, they're going to start not just defending themselves, they're going to start fighting back. And I hope it doesn't come to that.
I hope they fight back peacefully or in the proper channels.
You can't ask them to fight back peacefully if they're being killed in record numbers. That's the issue. If they're being killed and assaulted in record numbers, and that's the reason for this, is we need to deal with this problem. We need an off-ramp.
So what's your solution to the political violence seemingly coming from the left?
Well, I can tell you this: there is no solution until there's a structural changes to the makeup of the Democrat Party. In other words, you can't have over 60% in poll after poll after poll supporting some kind of political violence. You can't have the Summer of Love and those riots. You can't have the Tesla bombings. You can't have Charlie Kirk and people coming out and people in the Democratic Party saying, well, though I condemn the violence, he was hateful. He wasn't. His rhetoric. That needs to change for us to be able to find common ground. It needs to come from the left. The left needs to tone down the temperature, and they need to take ownership and apologize, and they haven't. That means the leadership, and that means anyone who went out there and justified or celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk. There needs to be such a chorus from, let's assume that you're more left-leaning. It's not enough to not condone political violence. You have to be championing that cause in your own ranks, because we're not seeing it. That's the only way.
So you would like to see from the Democratic leaders some sort of
Everyone.
Condemnation, apology,
Accountability.
okay.
Yeah.
And then how do we stop this, I guess, violent rhetoric, or the kind of rhetoric that's inciting violence?
Well, that would be
how
the
do
left. The left needs
because-
to stop it, right?
The
And then we need to-
leaders can come out and they can condemn it and they can apologize, but assuming these polls are correct, how do we change the 62% who are okay with political violence?
Well, right now, again, this is why the why matters. The reason that you have 62 in some polls, 60 in some polls more, is because of the leadership and the temperature in the Democrat Party. So that alone maybe brings it down to 50. It doesn't bring it down to conservative levels, but it brings it down pretty low. And then the left needs to be on board with such harsh on crime policies and realities. For example, before Charlie Kirk, we had Irina Zarutska, right? There in North Carolina, the woman who was stabbed.
I don't know about that.
White woman who was stabbed by a black man who was released 14 times. Stabbed her in a subway. She bled to death.
That's awful. Was that
Terrible.
was political violence you're saying? Or that
No,
was
what I'm
just-
saying
oh.
is political violence thrives in blue districts where you have catch and release and IOU, no cash bail policies. This guy was released on an IOU, deemed mentally unfit to stand trial by a leftist judge, by a leftist court system, 14 times. Do you know the average amount of times that a murderer has been released before they commit a murder?
I do not.
11.
I
11.
would have to see something on that.
Yep. Again, the QR code will make all of it available. So the left not only foments violence through rhetoric, but then they also facilitate it by soft on crime policies with the same rhetoric, because keeping people behind bars, having actual bail needed to be posted, is considered racism. Every single proposal that comes from the right is racist, it's fascist, it's sexist, it's homophobic, it's transphobic, and now we have people dying. So those two things need to change. Crime policy and the rhetoric from the top down.
Okay.
Do you think that would make a difference?
I mean, I personally support some of the crime changes you're discussing. I guess I do have a follow-up question, which is, you mentioned that
And there's a QR code, by the way,
Okay,
with
perfect.
the sources.
that an average murderer is released 11 times.
Yeah.
Is there, do those murderers commit more, acts of violence when they're released? Is there some kind of statistics on that? Because, does that actually
Well, I mean, they've been brought in for
'cause
serious
are
crimes
they-
11 times.
But are they, when they're released, are they under house arrest? Are they under, they're not committing more crimes when they're on trial for
Well, I would
murder,
imagine
right?
between crime 6 and 7, and between crime 7 and 8, they're committing more crimes, all the way up to 11. I think we can agree on that, right? That's pretty self-explanatory.
I mean-
this guy was released 14 times, including already committing armed robbery. And this is not the only example. You know, George Floyd,
What about him?
9 times. He robbed the woman at gunpoint with her daughter in the house. This was a serial violent criminal
Right.
who had no business being on the streets. I'm just picking it because it's an example of someone you would know.
Right. I mean, I'm totally with, the justice system and
Locking them
all
up.
these-
If they commit violent crimes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
I
lock
agree.
them up.
If you're convicted of a violent crime, then you should be convicted according to, whatever the state's penal code is. And
The problem is the states where leftists
So
are in
you-
charge
you
is very
think-
soft.
you
You don't
think-
need to have any.
but you think the solution to
Yeah.
political violence and the problem with the left right now
Yes.
is we need the left and the right to work together on crime
No.
policies? No, you don't want
No, not on the. Well, first, on the crime policies, here's what needs to happen. Before that, the rhetoric. The left needs to take full ownership and accountability. Okay? And not just the leadership, but people like you who seem like decent people. We need to see you calling out your own the same way you would see conservatives call out their own here if someone were to be violent. We need to see that rhetoric be toned down and changed completely. We're not fascist, we're not racist, we're not transphobic, we have disagreements of opinions.
I agree with you.
And then as far as crime, we need to go back to the crime policies that we had that worked and the left altered. We don't need to work together. We need the left, these judges, these DAs, to go back to punishing
here's my
crime.
question for you.
Yeah.
Isn't crime sort of a state issue? I mean, you have state judges, you have state penal codes. These state judges are elected by popular vote. what is the federal government? What can the left even do? What can
Well, it
we
needs-
even do?
So
about
that
what
would
the
need
states-
that would need to come from those in charge in these blue districts. For example, these judges who let people go 10, 15 times. For example, in New York, where DAs, there's no cash bail, there's catch and release. It's literally an IOU. Hey, will you come back to court even though you committed armed robbery? Yeah, I promise I will. Free to go, and they murder somebody. The left needs to fix this. We can't. Because you don't have the same political violence on the right, and you don't have the same revolving door of crime in red districts. These are facts, and it's not working, and people are getting tired of it. So those would be the two solutions. But here's a QR code, if you'd like to look that up. And Jacob, I really do appreciate you sitting down and having a civil discussion.
Appreciate you having me on.
And please do go, anytime you see it, condemn it, and let people see you condemning those kinds of actions. Because I think you can at least you can make a big impact in your circle of friends. I mean it.
All right.
I mean it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Be well.
You know what? Jacob's all right by me. That was a solid conversation, even though we didn't agree on every detail, or maybe even most details. You can tell that he sat down in good faith, has a good head on his shoulders, heart seems like it's in the right place. We were able to engage. And up next was this strapping young gentleman, Connor from San Francisco. I know what you're thinking, but it's not entirely that. Hear him out. So the premise that I'm asserting today, discussing is, of course, there's violence that takes place on all sides.
Right.
But the tenor, tone, temperature today, the increasing, we haven't gone more than 3 days with a serious violent attack.
I agree. Yeah.
Is predominantly coming from the left. That's not by accident, and it's becoming unsustainable for us as a
Right.
country. If you disagree, you're more than welcome to change my mind.
So I guess just to quickly clarify, I can agree that there's been significantly more, at least from my perspective, violence on the left as of late, 100%. But throughout history, I think there's been violence that has occurred from right-wing ideology, left-wing ideology.
It has.
And so I wonder what's the line, just to kind of clarify before I get into my main claim, of what's the difference between there being violence on the left and then the left as a whole being violent. I guess that's where I want to understand the line.
Well, that's fair.
And before you get to a claim, because we have a lot of people make claims outside of the topic, I do want to try
It's
and
within
stay
the
on
topic, yeah.
the topic today. An act of violence would be, for example, someone on the left, Charlie Kirk, being assassinated. Would we agree?
Absolutely.
Leftist violence. Okay. Here's the reason that this is such a boiling point, is because not only a non-elected official, Charlie Kirk,
Right.
was assassinated in cold blood publicly, directly inspired by the rhetoric of the leadership from the left, the mainstream leadership from the left, to be clear, fascist, Nazi, right? If he's a fascist and a Nazi, then I'm Himmler, because he was much more moderate than I am.
Right.
Don't let the demeanor fool you. I will sit
Right.
down and talk with anyone, but I am
Yeah.
not moderate by any means.
I agree.
And then the gleeful celebration thereafter. I can tell you, I've never seen more people leave the left. COVID would be number two. People said, I didn't realize that my friends would celebrate this kind of bloodlust.
Yeah.
And then poll after poll, for example, after the assassination in cold blood of Charlie Kirk, the YouGov poll showed that 77% of self-identified conservatives oppose political violence in all forms, only 38% of liberals. And there were other snapshot polls that show that the left supports political violence in one degree, from varying degrees, at a ratio of 6-1 to conservatives.
Right.
And after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, over 60% of those on the left said that it was
Right.
somewhat to completely acceptable. You
Right.
do not find an equivalent on the right. Does that answer your question?
To an extent, I think I guess where I kind of want to further clarify is, so I can agree that the current climate and the current rhetoric has definitely pushed people towards violence. But I think we can agree that certain ideas can exist outside of the current climate, right? Like certain maybe things on the left are like
Higher marginal tax rates.
higher marginal tax rates, or maybe like someone being like, let's say, pro-gay marriage, or just some traditionally left-wing policies in the
Sure.
current climate.
I would say that progressivism and leftism is inherently violent as an ideology because seizing the means of production and distribution requires force in comparison to traditional conservatism. But
Right.
yes, the ideals, for example, can exist outside of violence. Yes.
Okay, I guess that clarifies it. And I guess then I want to ask, because I'm a Christian myself, I know you are as well.
Yeah.
I watch your show, and I was really, really frustrated with the whole Charlie situation. I was
Sure.
kind of distraught about it, and I didn't know how to kind of move forward. And I know you said on your show that as the right, we need to have, correct me if I'm wrong, righteous, lawful violence against people who want to perpetrate, events like this. And I guess I just wonder, how do we deal with that to be firm and call a spade, but then also not and set our own rhetoric back? Because I think that I
Sure.
can see how. I'm from San Francisco. So
I'm sorry.
it's okay. Yeah, first
How
political
many poop piles have you had to physically avoid? Or are you far away from downtown, just the Bay Area?
I'm in the city, but I'm not close to downtown, so
Okay.
I'm a little bit away from it. But actually, the first political video I ever watched was your video over here at SMU.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't even know, but so.
All right.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is, where is that line? Because
Yeah.
I do worry, again, as someone who wants to be Christian, who wants to, evangelize and bring people to my point of view.
Yeah.
How do I do that without, again, being like ostracizing, I guess?
Sure.
You know?
I'll tell you where the line is right now. It's the law.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, and I've talked with people about this quite a bit, and Charlie did his own thing in his own version, which was very different, but I started this in 2016, 2017.
Right.
There are really only two people who know what it's like to be in that chair,
Right.
even though they're different, but I'm saying it's the most comparable thing. And this is not the first time we've had to have this kind of security.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, we had a highlight reel of the attacks, the rocks, the punches, the milkshakes. And here's the thing. There have been times in the past where I have put myself and my team at risk when I would have been well within my lawful rights to not. And what I'm saying is, so you may not be super familiar with hockey. Do you?
A little bit. I've
Okay.
seen a few games.
So let me draw an analogy for you. What I'm talking about is within the bounds of the law. And the term I use, I believe my words were ruthless, lawful violence in defense
I
of
might
our
have said
own.
righteous on accident.
No, it was worse. I said ruthless.
Okay.
And I don't run from it, and I stand by
Okay.
it. Changing the temperature and tone. So the last time we were at SMU, or that first time I should say, one
Was
of the
that There Are Two Genders Changed My Mind? Was that one?
I believe so. SMU was one of the first ones that was
Yeah.
some of the first ones I was with a sandwich board and a morph suit because it didn't start on
Yeah,
campus.
I remember you'd walk around with it.
Yeah, and then I had someone shove me and I was like, oh, I can't defend myself. I'm basically a mascot. There was someone who worked there at SMU who said, why do these guys, this was back then, why do these guys need all this kind of security? My dad was my security back then.
Really? I know
He
that.
said, Maya Angelou spoke here, she didn't need that. And my dad said to him, he said, and why do you think that is?
Yeah.
And you could see his face change. And he got it, and he said, we'll get you what you need.
Right.
Then, unfortunately, we had faculty, and we had people in the administration who made us move. That put us at risk.
Yeah.
We had the right to be there. We had people come up and commit acts of violence. We had people pick up rocks I don't know if it was SMU, TCU, UNT, try and hit me over the head with it. And what we did was we said, hey, please stop. We would move locations.
Right.
And I've had members of my team assaulted as a result. And what I'm saying is we need to change the tenor and tone. Let me really clarify this. Hopefully this helps. I hope that people out there like, what's his name, Destiny,
Yeah.
I hope that he's able to do his copycat, change my mind with no security as he does now for the rest of his life.
Right.
And I've never called anyone to go commit acts of violence.
Right.
I want them to be deathly afraid of coming into our group and assaulting our own.
Right.
I feel like a
Right.
shepherd, an unwilling shepherd, who didn't do his best to protect his flock.
Right. And would you sort of lean on, I know Charlie talks about this a lot, but the commandment of, it's not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not murder. And so you're saying that we should, again, be able to use the law, you're just saying to defend.
What I'm saying is today,
Yeah.
if someone lifts a rock to come hit me over the head, he won't be asked to put it down. He'll be tackled.
Right.
And if there are enough of those, there'll be less rocks being thrown. For the
Right.
same reason that we see lower gun crime in areas where we have higher gun ownership.
Right.
Let me use an example for you, hockey. So I don't know if you know this, but in hockey, there were people who were called enforcers for a long time. They didn't score any goals their entire career. They just fought. And it was very important. Here's why.
Yeah.
Because let's say Wayne Gretzky, he wouldn't allow himself to be traded unless he had Dave Semenko and I believe McSorley traded with him because they protected him. The reason why these guys just fought is because a penalty from the ref, the government, putting you in a penalty box is worth it for a player on the other team if he breaks Wayne Gretzky's knee and he can't play in the playoffs, right? The consequence was Semenko or McSorley is going to come out and beat the shit out of you, right? They're going to enforce it. So what happened is there were fewer injuries. There's a player named Crosby who had more concussions in one season when they changed those rules than Gretzky had his entire career.
Yeah.
Having those enforcers on the bench, as rarely as they had to fight, set the tone where there was self-enforcement.
Right.
And we do have laws that allow us to protect ourselves. And unfortunately, we've foregone them to the point where now you have liberal prosecutors, DAs, and judges, where you have someone like DeCarlos Brown Jr., who was let out 14 times before he killed Zarutska on the subway.
Yeah.
And you know what else? The culture of passivity is why no one fucking helped her.
You're right.
And she died in public, but she died alone.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's empathy.
Right.
I hope that clarifies. It's changing the temperature
Right.
where they don't think we're sitting ducks.
Yeah, no, I can agree on that. I think you've changed my mind on the understanding of that. I guess where I'm still like, my minor disagreement is, again, I know people who are maybe more classical liberal or moderate to San Francisco standards, so take that as you will, who did mourn the death of Charlie Kirk, but won't change their mind and go to the right. But I still wouldn't call those people violent, even though they're on the left. I could agree maybe extreme leftism is violent. I could,
No, I'm not calling them violent.
So I understand that, but I guess my concern is then with the. Again, I think you're a very intelligent person. I think you're very thoughtful, and I think you think about things, have your sources. But I know a lot of people aren't.
You give me too much credit, sir. But thank you.
But let's just say again, I know people on campus who will quote, I don't want to name drop these influencers, who say things online and they have far less credibility, haven't done their research, and then they take something like this and run with it to an extent that I think could then backfire. And that's why
I agree with you on that. And I think I will say intelligent. I don't know. I'm smart enough.
Okay.
I'm very careful with my language.
Yeah.
And I'm very meticulous in my sourcing.
Yeah.
This show, and by the way, guy who deserves credit is there are people back here.
Yeah.
We make, so you can scan the QR code.
got
We
one.
make all of our references available
yeah.
for every show, because I'm trying to be as responsible as possible. And the reason I try and be clear as responsible as possible is because I also don't want to soft walk it.
Yeah.
I also want to, when I say righteous, ruthless, lawful violence, I am not saying that those people are violent. But here's the thing. And I've talked to, sorry, I have with this bulletproof vest, it causes
I
belching.
thought you just hit me in the chest quite a bit.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, you are San Francisco, sir. If you're a heterosexual, it must be annoying in San Francisco because you must get people making passes at you all the time. Come on, you're a young guy. We all know. Let's not act like we don't know what we're talking about here. I agree with you. I think there's a real problem, and we call out clickbait culture quite a bit. And people will say things to get clicks. I think that you will see with us we're remarkably consistent, and I am consistent in this. I'm saying predominantly the left, and I don't think there's an off-ramp.
Yeah.
Here's why. You can't point me to a single example on the right at all recently comparable to Charlie Kirk, meaning a non-elected official being assassinated as an act of terrorism in cold blood, and every single vigil, memorial afterwards being desecrated by people on the left. Well, people from us.
People from us, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So the left, collectively, killed one of our guys,
Right.
and then came into they're so unafraid, came into our spaces and committed more crimes.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That temperature needs to change. And here's the thing. If your friends are truly peaceful, they would have no problem with it.
Yeah.
Just like I have no problem with someone else owning a gun.
Right.
I hope that everyone here who can lawfully carry is carrying, because I'm not
Right.
concerned with them.
Yeah. It was actually something you changed my mind on when I was from San Francisco, so you can imagine where my default view
I was
started.
raised in Canada where we didn't have, it was the magical closet of mystery, and it was a disassembled shotgun. Yeah, I get it.
I guess. So, do you think that inherent to the left, this idea of no guns, no kind of self-defense is sort of like looked down upon in San Francisco? We had a family friend of ours who I won't go into it because I don't want to give their information away, but
That's
out of self-defense. This was when Kamala was in charge, and she wanted to persecute this man for beating up somebody, not with a gun, with a flashlight, who came in his house, who was just got released from San Quentin, who had a history of violence, sexual violence, and he was in his house looking at his daughter's room, and Kamala tried to prosecute her. And so I can see where that line is dangerous, but I guess, again, how do we, I don't see a world where we can change that ideology fully, so how do we get them to maybe agree on, we need to uphold the law on our own, as well as, again, change people's minds how you're doing it?
Sure. They won't agree. Now, it's funny that you bring that up, because there was an example of, and I have dual citizenship too. I was born in Detroit but raised in Canada from 3 to 18.
Yeah.
A man beat a home intruder at 3 a.m. in his house.
Detroit?
No, in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Beat him, and then he was brought up on charges because it was excessive. In my opinion, killing an intruder in your house at 3 a.m. who is there to cause harm is not extreme. I don't even think it's immoral. He beat him up. So this is not an accident. When you mentioned in San Francisco, Kamala Harris, that's by design. The man was released 14 times before killing Zaruska on that subway. Not only that, you know who else we could say that about? George Floyd. George Floyd, I can't remember, 6s and 9s, I have this weird dyslexia. It was either 6 or 9 times that he was caught and released. He robbed a woman at gunpoint with her child present. And so the left disarms people.
Was she pregnant or did she have a child?
She wasn't pregnant.
Okay.
That was misinformation that a lot of people put out there, and we clarified. And that's part of the problem that we're discussing. Right? People go, the truth is in us. It was a 3 or 4 year old toddler there. That's
Yeah.
awful. It's sexier to say she was pregnant. And so people believe a lie, and then when you go out, not you, but when people go out and argue a lie, someone on the left goes, see, you believe the fake news.
Yeah.
Which is why we try and be accurate. But systemically, the left
Right.
needs to take accountability of their rhetoric. Your friends need to call out their ranks the same way that we do on the right. And we also need to change the systemic soft on crime policy that we have seen. And the reason for that is because if you keep someone in jail, it's racism. If you, for example, force them to post bail, it's classism. So we have repeat offenders committing crimes. So the left will say they're peaceful,
Right.
but invariably they always enable crime and violence.
Yeah. So is the issue that the policy enables it, or is it that it's inherent to it? Because I can see, not that I agree with, but I can see the perspective of, okay, you know, you can even stand on a veiled Christian argument here where you say, oh, well, everyone's worth redeeming, everyone's worth redemption.
Sure.
So therefore, maybe we'd be a little bit softer because we want people to be in society, we want people to reform. I agree it's not working, but do you think that idea,
I think there's nothing Christian about it.
can you explain that?
I don't think there's anything Christian about someone committing a violent crime and not facing justice.
Sure,
We serve a God of justice.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you'll find anything in the Bible, Old Testament or New, that justifies kid gloves treatment of violent criminals.
Right.
I will say this, the left wants you scared, dependent, dumb, and numb. Right? That's what they want if they could have their policy because it's a people more easily controlled. That sound like a good portion of San Francisco?
It's not, no.
Really, it doesn't, considering that we've enabled drug culture in San Francisco. Oh, needle exchange.
Yeah.
You're a criminal. We're going to punish the person who protects their house. I'm saying San Francisco, Detroit, Chicago, you see what the left wants.
No.
And they want that for the rest of the country.
Do you think they do want that? I guess
Yes.
that's where I'm
Yes,
kind of
I do.
struggling. So I think possibly
Yeah.
that there are certain politicians who I can name or I think that are doing that. I think genuinely want what was worse for America. I don't think Ilhan Omar wants something good for America. But I do think there are people who I meet, like I've seen the mayor of San Francisco around. I don't think that person, Daniel Lurie, wants those things to happen, but I think he comes from a place of, this sounds nice, oh, like let's be nice on crime, and then it leads to an extremist view that isn't, again, inherent with the left, but because it sounds like a nice idea. It sounds, to me at least, it sounds like I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying it sounds,
Sure.
at a cocktail party, like, why doesn't everybody just get out of jail and be kumbaya and swing around? Like, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
But I guess that's where I'm wondering, like, I do think some people in their heart of hearts believe that is what they're trying to advocate for, but it leads to more extreme people who do have maybe nefarious.
I don't think it's extreme. I think it's mainstream leftism. And here's
Yeah.
where I think, because I used to be more like you. I will tell you the difference between the difference between 2008 me, where you can see me with the blue bed sheet on YouTube. There were no Christians on YouTube. There were no conservatives. In 2012 me, 2015 me, and today is it's gotten worse, and I'm willing to have conversations. But I think it's important to separate those who actually want to have conversations. And those who simply want chaos and violence. And I will say that is a fundamental precept of the left. You say you think they want what's good for America. They don't want America. They want something else.
Yeah.
If you're not entitled to protect your family and your own, that's not American. If you're not allowed to raise your child as you see fit, barring abuse, that's not American. The idea, let's look at, Joe Biden. He said it's an act of evil to not affirm your child's transition. Does that seem like we just have a difference of opinion? He said it's evil.
Yeah.
Let's look at Kamala Harris. Transgender inmates, taxpayer-funded sex surgery, as well as disarming the populace. Walls. His state is a sanctuary state where if you have a 9-year-old wants to transition and you say no, they can flee to his state in Minnesota, and they will hide your child from you to protect them because of the abuse of not allowing their child. Does that seem like these people want America? They want a fundamentally different country.
Yeah.
They don't want what's good for America. They want something other than America. And that's why you need to be disarmed, and that's why you need to be made passive.
Do you think that the...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a really good point. I didn't know the thing about some walls.
Oh, it's evil. It's evil.
Yeah.
It's not even the only state.
So do you think that... Again, I wonder... I often think... I want to, again, see, okay, you have these left-leaning policies or views or whatever you want to call it, if you're not a policy... or views if you're not a politician. And let's say, you're very pro-transgenderism. I sometimes argue that, well, it's very difficult to have that stance because if I can't say 100% of the time that you're a man, then how am I going to say how I can treat a man or how can I treat a woman? Because we need to have a society that can first observe a universal truth and then therefore. So do you think those those maybe like secondary ideologies are coming in place.
I don't think they're
to
secondary.
dismantle- Oh, sorry. They come. Maybe sorry. They don't come in first. Like you start with something like a Medicare or Medicaid, and then gay marriage, and then now it's where it is today. Do you think that the point of that is to get to a place where we can't say anything is wrong, and that we can kind of, do what we want? Well, I guess what are your thoughts?
No,
on
I
that?
think you're on the right track. I think they want to replace, and I see the crucifix that you have, replace God with the state.
Yeah, I agree.
Because God says men are men and women are women.
Right.
God says that he made women from man's rib because it was not good for man to be alone. And he says that men have a role and women have a role. The left in this country says there's no such thing as men or women, and we're equal in all facets. By the way, let's get rid of pull-ups from the military. That's how extreme they go. God says that you were fearfully, wonderfully created, and he knew every hair on your head before you were born. The left says it's not a life until it leaves the vaginal lips. And I don't say that to be shocking. I say it because they're not just talking about in utero.
Right.
They're not just talking about the uterus. Literally, a 9-month-old baby. You have not found one Democrat on a national platform who would put any limits on abortion whatsoever. When asked, hey, is 9 months too late? They always say, we won't give a definitive answer. They'll give a definitive answer, though, on your right to own a firearm.
Right.
I think it's fun. Here's how you deal with it. Here's how I deal with it. People who are willing to sit down and have a conversation, great. I try and be respectful, polite, but I think that bluntness is a more valuable tool at this point because we've allowed it to go too far. And anyone who raises a hand in violence needs to be dealt with within the fullness of our lawful right to self-defense.
Yeah.
I think it's an A or B. There's a gray area, but not everything is as nuanced as the left wants you to believe. Because if everything is nuanced and nothing is true, then we don't know up from down.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't want to see you. I don't know what you're studying, but you understand Charlie Kirk was hunted,
Yeah.
just as I have been hunted, just as my father has been hunted. There's a reason he's not. He used to be my security. He's not here because he's too recognizable, and people have taken shots at him.
Yeah.
You're one viral X post or one good video where you make a good point away from being hunted as well. That's not America.
Yeah.
That's not America.
Yeah. I guess last question. I
Yes.
probably don't disagree enough to honestly have.
No, it's okay.
To go on, but as someone who I think, again, like I think one of the most fundamental values to like my Christian beliefs are that every human is equal and created in the image of God.
Yep.
So I guess I have something in, again, if someone broke into my house and I had to commit violence against them, something within myself is a bit scared of that possibility, a bit like sad for that possibility. And so I guess, again, like how do you, from a biblical or from a spiritual, or I would say biblical, but some people say spiritual perspective.
Yeah. The San Francisco white ladies. I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual. Oh, I am. Just as a demographic. It's okay.
I don't want to point any fingers. Someone watched this, and I might know a few of those. But
All right. I'll point them for you.
how do you deal with that, and how do you?
I'm not sad at all.
Yeah.
You know why? Because I have a
Why's that?
child sleeping in that house.
Yeah.
It's my duty. Let's separate this into feelings and duty.
Yeah.
If you have a wife, if you have children, if you have a flock, is it your duty as a shepherd to protect that flock?
Yeah.
Go fulfill your duty.
Yeah.
And don't feel bad about it. That doesn't mean that you go out and kill other flocks.
Yeah.
It's your duty to protect that flock. I had a Christian, someone who spoke Christianese very close to me. Now, I don't want to point fingers. Who said, you know what? And I watched my dad have this conversation. Dad's the best man I've ever known. I use him as an example because I grew up and he always had these conversations. He said, I wouldn't be able to take a life if that man was in my house. My dad said, yeah? What if he's currently mounting your wife? He said, well, my dad said, what kind of a man are you?
Right.
He said, because I don't count you amongst us. And that's what I believe. I don't think that you go out and you seek violence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The most dangerous man is one who's actively avoided violence and has been brought to his front door.
Right.
I think Charlie Boy, this certainly qualifies. I'm not saying that in the reference to Charlie Kirk. That's a quote from the film The Edge. This certainly qualifies where we are.
Yeah.
And as long as no one comes here and tries to eradicate us, attack us, they can sit down just as you have. But the thing is, Charlie Kirk and myself, we've managed to avoid all kinds of violence. People like us sat down at a table and would talk with anyone who would listen. They took his life anyway, and they've tried to take mine.
Yeah.
So I'm not playing that game anymore.
What? I know you stopped for a little bit, but why? Seems a little bit illogical. Someone gets assassinated, then you go back. What gave you the courage to do that?
I'm different from people. Funny enough, people like Charlie and I have friends. For example, I have a friend, Andrew Wilson, who goes out and debates. His head pops off the pillow. It's like, who can I debate today?
Yeah.
I don't like it. I'm a very unwilling participant.
Yeah.
I did it because I felt that it was necessary. And honestly, I'll tell you, it was kind of a relief when it got to the point where it was so expensive because of the security risks,
Yeah, I can see.
where I kind of alleviated myself. I was like, you know what? Okay, it doesn't make sense. And I always wanted students to do it. It was always designed to highlight the failure of the institutions. In other words, having these conversations.
Yeah.
Because I would ask students, why do you think this is the first time that you're hearing this, considering that they're going to these great schools, right?
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, a lot of people, and I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk who did his own thing that was separate, but there were a lot of other people who copied it and morphed it, and it became about dunking, and it became about making fun of uneducated students, whereas I actually have a heart for them because they've been failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the security risks, I kind of thought, you know what, I don't need to do it anymore. People have taken it on themselves. I can do what I'm best at, which is a daily show that's largely comedy. It's important now that the left knows we're not afraid.
Yeah.
Because when they say tone down the temperature to us, I said, do you mean like sitting down at a table and having a conversation? Because the only way to tone it down further is silence.
It's true.
That's the reason I'm back here, for better or worse.
When I do think when you see Destiny or Hassan Piker or one of these guys going out, they have a harder time doing, for some reason, I don't know what it is maybe, but they have a harder time holding a conversation with being so calm.
And with no security, or very little.
Yeah.
They don't need the same kind of safety measures that we
Yeah.
do. And that needs to change.
Yeah,
that needs to change. Well, thing was it, what was your name?
Connor.
Connor.
I have a mug
Nice
at
to
home.
meet
I
you.
wish I would have brought.
Oh.
Do you mind if I get a picture really quick with you?
No, absolutely, that's fine. Just in slow motion so that the security guys, you
I
don't
shot
want them
him
to jump in.
with our podcast.
Absolutely, Connor.
I'm a really big fan of yours. So.
Thank you, Connor. I appreciate it. You think you're going to settle in Texas or go back to California?
It depends. I mean, I really like tech and like AI, so I'm drawn to that for the job purposes, but I like living here a little bit better. For
Okay.
a few reasons.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe split the difference in Austin and live on the outskirts.
Austin, I don't want to live in
No,
Austin.
I know it's gross too. Thank you, brother. I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
it. Thank you. Be well. You know, at San Francisco aside, I'd vote for Connor for governor of California. There'd probably be fewer piles of human feces requiring an app to track. Up next, and this one's a little bit of a flyer, but we thought we should include it anyway, because why not? Atticus. Atticus, nice to meet you, sir. Good, strong name, Atticus.
Thank you.
Today, and the reason for all the security that you see here, out of necessity, predominantly the left is responsible for the tenor and tone and political violence to the point that discourse may be irretrievable, which is why we're sitting down here. If you disagree, you're welcome to change my mind.
Actually, I don't know if the gentleman told you, I was actually here to try to have a more nuanced conversation about agreeing with you.
Okay.
If that was possible.
Okay.
I was actually going to say I'd like to have a conversation in the spirit of like Thomas Sowell and Larry Elder, where your ethnicity is more important and your culture is more important, and that is not a race issue. Race is more of a construct socially.
Sure.
You can end up controlling that.
The old Black
entire-
Rednecks and White Liberals book.
It's
a great one.
So on and so forth. And even in America, it's a microcosm inside your ethnicity, even regionally, deep south to Connecticut,
Sure.
etc.
Even looking where the term like crackers or honkies come from certain areas in rural, for example, Ireland or the
Yes.
UK. I know Sowell is brilliant on that, where I
Yes.
was like, hey, I guess cracker's not all that offensive. We can use cracker.
Yeah. So more or less the conversation I'm trying to have with you is, as white gentlemen, what is it?
A very white gentleman.
Very, very. I'm reflecting.
I know. You give Larry Bird a run for his money.
Appreciate
I
it.
come from a family of gingers. I don't know if I get some of it in
I
my
only
beard,
had
but
the three-pointer, type of thing. But I'm just wondering, inside white culture, if we can call it out, like when we celebrate Larry Elder calling out systemic things that have happened in the past that have caused, the crime rate, etc. What would you say our white culture is? The taking the father out of the home, the putting everybody on welfare for substitution of marriage, etc., violence in music and entertainment. What can white people look back on culturally or historically that's made it since even J. Edgar Hoover's time, where white people are conditioning the Marxism that's leading to all the violence? I mean, Charlie Kirk is the example that this is a Marxist hive. The violence comes out in droves, and when you break it down statistically, 80% of academia is controlled by white people.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to be I voted Trump 3 times. This isn't some
No, I get it.
closeted trying to have you into a pointless race conversation.
No, and I can't spend too much time on it because
Yeah,
we do need to have the
absolutely.
discussion about
But
political
I am
violence.
curious what-
Is your question, just make sure that I understand this correctly, what is the white equivalent in, for example, our culture taking accountability, like the black community for pulling fathers out of the home? What should we
exactly.
take account for that maybe has veered us on the wrong
Yeah,
track?
more causation than correlation.
Okay. Well, I would say, actually, funny enough, one of them would be taking fathers out of the black home, because that goes back to Lyndon Johnson and Model Cities, the Great Society program, where we changed the modern welfare state. I would also say it goes back to the 19th Amendment. And I don't mean women voting, but a big change in this country. A lot of people don't realize, because if you say that, they say you're saying women shouldn't vote. That's not what I'm saying. Before that, not all men, very few men had the right to vote. You had to be a landowner. You had to pay taxes. You had to obviously be, there was mandatory enlistment or selective service, the draft, mandatory bucket duty, which is voluntary firefighter service.
Yep.
So voting was actually a duty that came along with responsibilities. And basically under the guise of, hey, equality, but actually there was a socialist movement saying, women, you're going to get the vote. I think a lot of people don't realize most women didn't want the vote. It was over 90%. You can find all kinds of pamphlets from anti-suffragettes. And the reason why women didn't want the vote is because they were saying, well, we don't have to be eligible for the draft. We don't want to have to pay taxes. And basically those in power they said, no, you're not going to have to do any of those things. You'll still get the vote. And there was a period of time in this country where women had the vote without having to fulfill those obligations, and men still did. And so I think that was a big turning point in voting from someone else in your own self-interest, and that opened the door for people who, for example, never work, never contribute, never serve their country, voting to take from other people. And, that's effectively a slow march towards socialism. I think that's a big part of it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would also put back on you, where do you see the systemic cause of the, how would you call it, the empathy to detriment inside white society also? Because I'm a single father. My daughter, she's 16 now, been just me and her whole life. And
God bless you. I know that's tough.
Appreciate that. And I see, if I may be so bold, I see very unhappy, childless, angry white women controlling all the narratives inside the school system. She is now starting to be homeschooled starting Thursday, because I just can't deal with it any longer. So I'm just wondering where that comes in.
I agree with you completely. I know where you're going, and I agree with you.
So,
I agree with you completely.
Yeah,
if only men voted, and again, this is not saying that women shouldn't vote.
Yeah.
If only men voted, we would not have men and women's sports. We would not have catch and release on crime. We would not have cashless bail. We would not have these, I guess you could say, Marxist policies based on empathy, which, by the way, also ends up foregoing the necessary empathy for the real victim, right? Soft on crime victimizes real people.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is because I think that a lot of people, look, it is white suburban women who elect Democrats in this country. What's crazy to me is, I assume you're a God-fearing man, to whatever degree.
Yes, sir.
You look around your church, okay? You look at the women in your church, and assuming it's even a conservative church, there are still more women in your church who vote Democrat than atheist men in most municipalities. It is a real problem. There's been a feminization of the church that has failed men. I would also say Ronald Reagan knew it was one of his biggest mistakes, no-fault divorce, and the custody laws that we have, something you may want to look into, and that we may play an active role in pushing in Texas in a way to fix it. Kentucky changed divorce laws to automatic 50-50 custody. Divorce dropped by 20-something%. I believe it was 27 last time I checked.
Yeah, I saw that too.
That was overwhelmingly popular in the Texas state legislature. Someone punted it. We're working to find out who. And I think we'd be on this. Yeah, there's a lot there that we need to take ownership of, and if we're going to say what, quote unquote, white people.
Yeah, I'm using
what
race as an adjacent to ethnicity, culture, and even that's regional, but still ends up creating everybody in academia leaning towards Marxist, progressive, and now they've even, if you go on Grok and ask how they identify, there's even a new identifier, which is radical progressive, radical leftist, and this is at 30%.
Do you know, I had a girl who sat down here, Madison Today.
Yeah, that's my daughter's name.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully yours is much better. She said that the CCP of China, she said that was conservative violence. She said communism is conservative because Karl Marx was a conservative. I tried to get out of that conversation as quickly as possible because you're not going to make any headway with that.
You can't.
She said
the
that
premise is
no.
wrong from the beginning.
And there was nothing I could say.
Yeah.
And that person's going to vote. That person's likely to become a professor.
Yes.
You said your daughter's 16.
Yes.
And she's with you.
She's with me.
That's a real blessing. I hope you know.
Yeah,
a lot of dads don't end up with it.
lucky,
Yeah, a lot of dads don't end up with that. And I think here's what I would say to you, on a personal level. Liberal white women are the worst. That's why I have a Latina at home now. She's I don't know if you know this, but Cuban immigrants are hardcore anti-communist.
Oh,
she's as right-wing as you
Burn
get.
your house down.
Yes, exactly. But I can deal with aggressive over passive-aggressive because you know where you stand.
Yes.
She hates communists.
Plus, passive-aggressive always comes with a knife, too.
Yes, exactly, it does. Yeah. Where you could be cutting, you walk in, we're cutting up your wedding dress in the walk-in closet. It's fatal attraction, boil a pet rabbit. But yeah, I will say, we're often taught, and I can just see in your mannerisms how respectful you are. You're probably a gentleman. We all have flaws. We're taught how to treat women. And we always get a little bit nervous. And we say, yeah, but are women taught how to treat men? Most are not.
They're not.
So in your individual life, especially if you're close with your daughter and you're a man who she respects, you do have a real opportunity there to be one of the few fathers saying, hey, look, if you want a successful relationship, I want a man who treats you well, but you need to learn how to treat a man, because that's something that we've lost.
That's something I definitely tell her. I tell her that what you just said, the world will tell your brother how to treat his wife, but no one's going to tell you how to treat your husband. And I reiterate to her that you are not an independent woman. What are you independent from?
Yeah.
You need to be self-sufficient, but independent from what? Nobody's independent from responsibilities or bills. So when a woman says, I'm independent, what are you meaning? Because you're not talking about your dad, obviously. You're talking about men.
They mean the holy union that God put forth that we are not designed to be independent from. That's often what they're bragging about. But Atticus, I know I hate to move you along because I do want to talk to people about political violence. But
I just wanted to, that question's been bothering me for a while.
Hopefully, I think, look, a single dad with a young girl, you can do a lot more good than I think maybe even you realize. Just having that foothold, being a good man who she admires, that's a rarity. It's a rarity that you are in charge of her. That's a blessing. Yeah, obviously, I don't know you that well, but seem like a good man. She'll listen to you. That can make a huge difference in a ripple effect. So I appreciate you sitting down, brother.
I appreciate the conversation.
God bless you, brother.
You too.
Go shoot some threes.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Atticus. I really do appreciate people bearing some personal issues like that, and sometimes that's what's great about this series. You never know where it's going to go. Speaking of which, here's the next guy, Harrison. He didn't want to talk about what we were talking about, but then we did talk about what we were there to talk about.
Nice to meet you, sir. What's your name?
Harrison.
Harrison? Do you mind scooting in? It'll be a little bit intimate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. So the premise today is that, by and large, the tone, tenor, temperature in this country is being set by overwhelming political violence that is coming, by and large, from the left. And I'm concerned that it would reach a boiling point from which we can't come back. That's a big reason for sitting down and having a conversation. If you disagree, you're more than welcome to change my mind.
See, I agree. I agree that the left is violent. I agree immensely with that fact. However, I disagree with the question in itself. So for me,
Which question?
They say the left is a violent nature. It's a group.
Yeah. Well, that's why I just
Right,
describe it like by and large. Of course, there's political violence across the spectrum, but it's not proportionate.
Right. And so my thing, the reason I came here to talk about.
And you disagree with that? That it's not proportionate?
No, I do. I think it is disproportionate left.
Okay.
But my thing is, I think if you had to look at the policies of the left, I think when you have policies, obviously there's events like the BLM riots, LA riots, you have Charlie Kirk, of course. But I think when you get to the actual policies of the left, like abortion, that's an inherently violent act. That's an evil act. 1.2 billion babies were killed since 1980. That's an evil act.
I agree with you.
Act. I think if you look at the LGBTQ things pushed by the left, there's higher rates of pedophilia, domestic violence, suicide, abuse, mental health. That's obviously a very violent culture, and for me, I'm very religious, so I see it as a sin. I think God views it as an abomination, but in a secular sense, there are these secular measurements that point to it being violent. I think if you look at multiculturalism, you can look in Europe and see how that has caused a lot of violence in Europe and in West Europe, and also cancel culture, censorship. That a lot of it's top-down censorship, I think, is a cause for violence. And so, yes, I think the left is disproportionately violent.
And can I just want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding you? What you're kind of saying, and I agree with, is that leftism, progressivism is inherently violent because of the means of enforcement.
Yes,
and also the policies.
The policy. And so my thing is, instead of saying okay, the inflammatory sense, like the left is violent. I think the left would disagree with that. The right obviously would agree with that. I think we should say, you know what, instead of saying this group is violent, let's address the policies. I think it would be more beneficial if you had a sign that says, I think abortion is violent, change my mind. I think LGBTQ is negative, change my mind. That's where it comes from.
Well, and I've done that to the tune of several billion plays.
Right, I'm sure you have.
Yeah, the reason we're discussing this today is because we haven't gone. Well, no, we haven't gone more than 3 days without an act of leftist political violence.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the ICE attack just down the street from here.
And so my question is...
So what you're saying would be more productive is what I've done since 2016, and we get killed anyway. And so now I'm addressing the root cause for that, the reasoning, which is the left, as you and I both agree, is inherently predicated on a violent means of enforcement.
I think it's predicated on an anti-Christian thing. I think if you look at the left, I agree. Christ, I think they try to renounce, they try to make government God, try to make social policies God, and that's what ultimately causes it. But at the same time, I think
it's interesting that you say that, because there was actually a girl who sat down here earlier, Madison, who said that the communist China, the CCP, was right-wing violence. She said it was conservative. She said that Karl Marx was conservative. She said that's right-wing violence.
That's just factually
and I tried,
correct,
and I tried to explain to her that Marxism, right, the root cause of not only communism but socialism, is replacing God with the state.
Of course, yeah.
She wouldn't hear it. So I agree with you that that is the root cause, and that's why we do multiple change my minds on the individual topics, addressing them as we go. We have another topic specifically addressing Antifa. So I guess I'm not hearing disagreement.
Not too much about that.
Maybe you just came the wrong day because you would have rather seen the abortion or Second Amendment.
I think also that the mainstream conservative movements also have some violent tendencies, violent policies as well. I think when you look at how the support of Israel and Palestine, obviously Hamas, I condemn them completely.
Sure.
I don't think it's an either or subject where I don't support Israel, so I support Hamas. I think that's backwards. I don't
think so either.
I don't support Hamas or Israel, but I do not support Israel saying Hamas on October 7th committed a heinous act, so it's okay for me to go carpet bomb all of Gaza.
I understand that. That's a very reasonable position.
And also, I think the way is we talk about censorship a lot. You talk about censorship from the left, and I really support that. We don't need censorship. But if you look at things like Palantir used by the Trump administration, that is setting the framework for massive censorship. And so I think those things on the right, we have to also recognize that there are issues on the right with violence as well. But
it's not the same though. Not the same as far as censorship. I agree, and censorship ultimately the means of enforcement is violent. And I would even go to the TikTok policy, where you see Vivek make a flip-flop policy, right, where they realized that it was a threat, and then all of a sudden they're pro, and then now there's an American company.
I'm sure you're banned. Aren't you streaming on Rumble? I'm sure you're banned on multiple things, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I was the first one demonetized on YouTube, and then I've been banned from TikTok.
Yeah, you, Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, those people face censorship all the time, and I think that's very impactful. And I think
but what we're addressing today is the temperature, culture, and those. Look, let me ask you this, because this is what we're talking about today. And I understand you're saying you'd rather discuss one of those other topics, but this is what we were talking about.
I understand. I'll stay on topic. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it, and I don't disagree with your fundamental premises on any of those, actually. The issue, why? Let me ask you this, because I asked someone, the most liberal person who sat down today.
Right.
I asked her, why do we have crime statistics? Why do we record them?
To track trends.
Right. Risk assessment.
Exactly.
To prevent it in the future, right? To see who's most at risk of violence.
Right.
Yeah. And so if we look at that, then we have to look at, okay, who is most at risk of political violence? It is absolutely those on the right today.
I agree.
And she said, well, no, we don't want to finger point. So the reason for this conversation is because most people sit down and say both sides or try and take it to a different conversation. And I'm not going to let her do it or you do it. Nope, right now we're being hunted. And I don't care if it's you, Nick Fuentes, Charlie Kirk. I know that they have disagreements. I am further to the right of Charlie Kirk. I don't care who it is. Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh when he was alive. Charlie Kirk was hunted. He was hunted because of the inspiration of the rhetoric from the left, just as I have been hunted. And we have to have all of this security, which no one now argues is unnecessary. And so we need to deal with that problem. It's the reason we have crime statistics. That's why we're discussing this today.
But I think you can see that the left is attacking. I think Charlie Kirk was attacked also for his Christian faith as well as conservatism.
Yep.
You can see that. I mean, what really upset me is on that Minneapolis, I think it was Minnesota, that church was attacked. Was it Minnesota? Or was
Michigan.
Michigan. And the BBC said, we don't know the reason. Clearly it was an anti-Christian attack, obviously.
Well, it was a Mormon church.
Okay.
And it seems like the guy was pretty upset. It doesn't seem like political violence because he may have been a Trump voter, as far as we know. He was a Marine veteran and seemed to really hate the Mormon church. So the target are conservatives, though. And that's one thing, too. For example, when they accuse it, if you look at these crime stats out there, and that's why we give these to you. Do you remember, so to give you an idea, and I think we're actually kind of coming to the crux of this here.
Right.
Truth is really important.
I think so. I think you have to call it out when you see it.
Yes. And I'm sure that you've heard from the left and probably here in these circles, people saying, actually, there's more violence coming from the right wing. That's a talking point right now.
I don't see that, I don't think the stats back that up.
No, well, stats do back it up. The problem is the stats come from two sources. Three, if you want to be generous. It comes from the Prosecution Project, which is what was cited at the Economist. That's why I had you read these definitions.
Right.
These are from the left.
Okay.
And all my sources are largely from the left, because the last thing I want is for someone to say fake news. And Cato. Cato is domestic terrorism deaths. The TPP is overall political violence. So when they assassinate Charlie Kirk, when they shoot at an ICE facility, when they attack an ABC affiliate for not having Jimmy Kimmel, right? When I have people try and firebomb my car, hit me with acid and concrete milkshakes, and then they gleefully celebrate the violence, then they come to the vigils, they come to the memorials and desecrate it, and then say, hey, your side is more violent, and they cite some stats. That's pretty important because how old are you?
I'm 18. I'm
okay, 18. So you may not remember, do you remember the Summer of Love George Floyd riots?
Yeah, I was about in middle school, so I wasn't super tuned in. But
No, that's okay. Again, we both agree on the term political violence. Let me show you what's not listed as left-wing violence. This was a famous death, a man named Aaron Danielson killed by a guy, Mr. Reinhold, in Portland, Oregon, on camera because he was a Trump supporter. Watch this. It's not graphic.
Yeah, clearly that's political violence.
It's not listed in any of them.
See, that's why I think that is awful. My question is to you.
And why do you think it isn't?
Because it doesn't fit the agenda.
Right.
It doesn't fit the agenda.
And that's the reason for the topic today.
And that's where my question to you is, you say the left is more violent. I agree.
Yeah.
How would you say that the right needs to turn it up with finger pointing, or do you think they need to, how do you plan on solving that? That's where I feel like that's really the two avenues.
So it's not finger pointing. It's identifying the problem, is my view. I don't think it's finger pointing if it's an overwhelming problem. And then especially, you can't be accused of finger pointing when the left goes, you commit more violence. Sorry for this, I'm just making a point. And you go, but wait, you didn't list that. The Waukesha, remember the man running over those at the parade, black supremacists? That's not political violence. All of the damage from the Summer of Love, not listed as political violence. 37 people died, right? There was $2 billion in damages, not political violence. Would you believe that the person in charge, the author at the Prosecution Project, that is cited and disseminated by The Economist and Newsweek, he was actually arrested on January 20th with the anti-Trump protests because there were about 200-something people arrested for committing acts of political violence, and he didn't include that either. That's the author of this study.
It's very skewed. I don't disagree with that.
But my point is, they're finger pointing and using it as a justification for continued attacks. So what's the solution? Well, identifying the problem. Identifying the problem. And then the only way we get out of this, and I think we would both agree that we want to avoid some kind of civil conflict war, right?
Well, I think Christ says, like, not to turn violent. Obviously, stand up for what you believe in, but as a Christian, I think we shouldn't turn to violent measures unless, like, your family or something like that is being.
A shepherd needs to protect their flock.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not advocating that people go out into the streets and commit violence.
Right.
I'm saying it's an inevitability, unless what the left needed to do when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and they would have to do this within weeks,
is condemn it immensely.
Is not only condemn it, is go, whoa. We have labeled those on the right, Charlie Kirk, and I understand you said you're a Nick Fuentes fan. My God, what would they say about him, right?
Yeah.
We have labeled these people fascist, Nazis, racist, homophobe, sexist, transphobe, genocidists, right? All of that.
Right, just
and
buzzwords.
people out there believe it. And you know what? You can't deal with a fascist at the ballot box. And my God, we've also said that Donald Trump will never relinquish power, and we've tarred and feathered half of this country because it's the voting public. We're sorry. We need to tone it down. We need to do better. And then combine that with reversing all the soft on crime policies that we see from the left.
I think we saw that.
Because that enables it.
Like the Ukrainian girl, I don't know her name, unfortunately.
Zarutska.
Yeah. But that man should have been in jail for life 10 felonies ago.
Yeah.
The fact that,
you know, else should have George Floyd.
Yeah, he was a career felon.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you.
And so the thing is, like, I think.
But those are the two solutions. Right. Those are the only two. And by the way, I think that the right needs to be ruthless in exercising their lawful right to self-defense.
I think so too. I think you should have a right to defend yourself, but also.
We haven't.
I think the right should set, not finger pointed, but stand up for the truth. Like, we have to recognize that the DEI standards of justice are not appropriate.
Yep.
I mean, I understand it.
We do though.
And things, it has to be more intense because that girl died for a felon. I mean, and when you say, well, the justice system is unfair, well, on per capita, African Americans commit 40 times more violent crime than whites per capita on a sheer number basis. It's like
violent crimes. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that stat, but I do know that a white person is 12 times as likely to be killed by a black person than vice versa, as far as the murder stat.
The problem is, if you point those things up, they say, okay, well, you're a racist.
You're a racist.
Fascist. Right. I think the right has to be like, if you call us that, we don't care. If you call us that, it doesn't matter. We're going to stand for what's truth. But my question is, you said the.
But do you agree with those solutions? The accountability, the changing the tone, the reversing the soft on crime policy,
I think it's
and the right taking the approach of lawful self-defense where we've afforded grace before. That's a three-pronged approach.
I think
it's partial?
Very probable, but I think it's unrealistic. I don't think the left will condemn it. I think
you're right.
So the question to me is, while it's ideal and that's great if they do condemn it, if they don't, what's your next step? What's the next point?
I'm doing it.
Just condemn it, continue. Just continue.
I'm continuing.
I agree with that.
Because when they say tone it down, from what? From sitting down at a table and talking with anyone who will listen? The only way to tone it down from here is silence.
Right.
I think, I know that you're an energetic guy. I think you've been respectful. Hopefully you think I've been respectful.
I thought it was a great conversation.
This is what I've been doing. They've tried to kill me anyway. And they did. The one that you saw that got through killed Charlie Kirk.
Right.
So when they say tone it down, what they mean is shut the fuck up, don't they?
I don't agree. I don't agree with that. At some point...
No, I mean, you don't agree with them, but you agree with the sentiment. That's, in other words, if they say you can't do this, tone it down, well, where do I tone it down?
Yeah, and as Christian men, we're not called to sit there and tolerate everything. I think as Christian men, obviously we're supposed to be meek, to be gentle, but also Christ calls us to be a lion for our faith. I think one of the popes said toleration of all religions, toleration of evil is the same as atheism. So I agree with your take. Like I know it's probably not entertaining for the viewers because we kind of agree on most stuff, and so But I agree.
Appreciate
I think really what I think is I think it has to come through a spiritual. I think it's a spiritual battle.
Yeah.
And I think honestly the left is very atheistic, and I think the only way you won't get them to condemn because I don't think they feel sorrowful. I think the only way to really make the lasting change is through a Christian revival, which I think is happening. I mean, if you look at Gen Z, Orthodox, Catholicism, Christianity, it's all on the rise. I think that's the only way to really stop it.
And are you Catholic?
I'm Orthodox. I actually switched from Methodist this summer.
So you know, it's funny. I'm not saying that I've converted, but I have a friend, Andrew Wilson, and he's Orthodox. And I've been going to actually an Armenian Orthodox church.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying I'm there yet, but because I do think that the sort of whitewashed Protestant church in this country has become feminized and has failed.
It's weak. It's gentle. It's too weak.
It's failed its constituents, and it's led us like lambs to the slaughter. And so I do understand, look, it doesn't mean that I'm there yet and agree with everything, but the truth is if there's so many factions, that means even if one individual or one church isn't complete, it means one is more right. And I do understand, too, with Gen Z, like when I started this in 2008, there were no Christians on YouTube. There were no conservatives.
Right.
I literally got
the millennial age was not Christian.
My first 10,000 subscribers, I literally found someone who did gun reviews, and I direct messaged my first 10,000 saying like, hey, I noticed that you like the Second Amendment. I think maybe you might like some of my content. And I did Crazy Pete's Abortion Barn, where with a blue bed sheet, I did a used car salesman selling abortions, reading from Planned Parenthood. The second one was a Quran challenge. I got a fatwa on me right away. But back then there were none. And I didn't, what I didn't expect was to see this kind of a swing, although I've always been pretty consistent, where I always said, when you whitewash Christianity, it's too easy for someone to come back with an argument and go like, well, God killed millions of people. I said, well, that's true. It's not just a God of agape love, it's also a God of justice.
Sodom and Gomorrah do exist.
Yep. And I've seen that change with Gen Z, where they're not just more conservative, they're more aggressively Christian conservative and steadfast in it, where they don't want this sanitized version that they know is not truthful.
Right.
And I appreciate that about a lot of young Gen Z men. I'm glad to see it, because there was, pre-baby boom, and then there was baby boom through Gen X, where everyone was just
soft.
a pussy.
Yeah, soft.
And I appreciate, whether we agree on everything or not, I appreciate your generation's picking it up.
Not to finger point, I feel very strong in my belief. So, I'm saying you have to stand firm in what you believe in. If you don't stand for anything, you don't. It doesn't matter, because these people do not play by the same rules that we have played for the last 30 years.
Yep.
They're violent. They have mobs. They have that attack. And so unless Republicans, conservatives say, you know what, if you want to play by those rules, we'll play by those rules. That's the only way to win. Obviously, not violence. Of course,
I agree.
Yeah.
Be righteous. Live consistently, and by the way, I'm a horrible example as a Christian. I just tell people that. That's why I also don't preach. Though we do a Friday apologetics episode with Gerald.
We're all working.
Be righteous, and also don't lose your spine and protect your own.
Be a man.
Be a shepherd.
So, all right. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you so much.
What
was your name again?
Harrison.
Harrison. Thank you, Harrison.
Yes, thank you
Be well, brother.
Well, there you have it. After years-long hiatus on this series, the first comeback stop of Change My Mind is in the books. And like I said, you can tune into The Daily Show on Rumble at 11 a.m. Eastern weekdays, along with all the references publicly available. But if you want more Change My Mind, which is a labor-intensive endeavor, comment below what you'd like to see next and where. And I'll level with you, as someone who's hesitant to sit in that chair, I was reminded of what makes Change My Mind so special. And what I want to continue to promote: genuine, raw, unedited, unfiltered, non-performative conversations where ideas can be challenged, people can respectfully engage, and a conversation can take place while we don't have to compromise on our principles or, frankly, find common ground based on a lie. I think you can be respectful and still be bold. You can be civil and still be steadfast. Identifying the difference between people discussing in good faith versus those who are not is a valuable skill in and of itself to have. But you tell me, what was your favorite conversation in this latest series, and what is it that means most to you about this kind of format? And most importantly, please remember, above all else, that the only way for people of our beliefs to tone down the temperature more from sitting down at a table and talking with anyone who will listen is silence. And we need to show those who want us to resign ourselves to that dog won't hunt. So until next time, genuinely appreciate your support. This has been Change My Mind.